Hello and welcome back. And in this video, we're going to be talking about DatePicker. So let's go ahead and create a new file, and I'm going to name this one DatePicker template. And now we are going to resume our preview and get started. So we can create VStack till that time with a text and say today is font dot title frame max width one more time dot infinity padding there you go. Okay, Control I to format, and now we see where things are. Okay, cool. Hi, awesome. We also need a foreground color dot white. Okay, cool. So now let's go ahead and take a look at what date pickers are. So now if you want to put a date picker into your view, you simply have to do date picker, right? And date picker has multiple overloads, like you can imagine. But the one that's actually the most useful is the one that takes a default string, basically a string that actually acts as a label, and then display component, right? So if you notice, most of these date pickers have this title key, and there are so many variations. But the one that we can actually choose is this one right here. Sorry, it has by default it has three components, and we are going to use this three component one, where we don't need this. We can just simply say we're going to come back to this one, and selection we do need, that's required. In we don't need. We're going to come back to that one. And display component is basically, you can select if you want to just display time, if you want to display date and time and stuff like that. For the selection, this needs to be a bindable object. Okay. Now we haven't talked about bindable object, but there is a new thing that was introduced called property wrappers. And property wrappers are these bindable objects, some of the predefined bindable objects, like state is one of them. And you can use that to keep a track of property changes that happen locally within your variables. So for example, if I have this state variable date selected and I choose or initialize current date with that value, I can bind it to this variable using $sign and saying $date selected. Now remember, dollar is to bind the variable, and at state is to define that variable is actually bindable. Okay, and we're going to talk about state and all the other property wrappers in future videos as well. So so don't worry about it. We're gonna get to that. But just so you know, whenever you need a bindable object, create that variable as at state, and it'll actually do the right thing for you. All right, so our build succeeded, and as you can see, we have this date picker created in our preview. Now, if I hit play, as you can see, I can actually change these, so it's actually fully interactive, and you can select dates in here. Now, if you want to change, if you change this to date dot hour and minute, for example, what's going to show is hour and minute. Okay, and that's what this display component means. Basically, display component takes the value what you want to display, like either date or hour, and it makes a date picker for you according to that. Okay. So there's another thing that you can actually do. You can see this space right here. That's up in front. You can actually add, select a date, for example. And if I save this, come on, you can do better than that. Okay, there you go. So it shows that label, that you want to have for your date picker. But it's rather annoying if you don't want to have this. It's rather annoying having that empty space in front of your date picker. So what you can do is you can apply a modifier that actually makes the label hidden. It's called labels hidden. Okay, and you can apply that to basically take off that extra padding, extra space that was needed for that particular string to show up. Okay, now let's go on a little bit more. So let's say if you want to set a minimum date that can be selected. Okay, in that case, you need to have some sort of minimum date, and that minimum date can be set in that in parameter that we just removed. So let's go ahead and create a variable, and we're going to create a let min date, yeah, and we're going to use calendar dot current dot date, and we're going to use by adding. Okay, we're going to say by adding day, and 2 is going to be there, but there's also going to be a value that how many days I want to add, and 2 is going to be today's date. Okay, and I'm going to force unwrap it because I know this value is going to exist there. So there we go. So min date is there. Now you can restrict that the minimum that user can select is today and forward. So you can put that restriction on simply by having in modifier, in parameter in your initializer. Okay, so you can simply say here in min date dot dot dot. So min date and moving forward. Okay, so our build failed. Oh, we forgot the comma. And there you go. I think we should be good. Okay, so if we resume that, it's gonna basically reload this, and let me try to select 2019, 2018, 2017. I cannot select that because all those dates are not available. Even previous dates are not available to me anymore because we are in this zone of having min date. Now I can select all the months because all those months are still going to exist in 2020. It's in January 2020, so it's still going to exist there. But you can see the minimum date is taking effect by trying to choose years and days, and you cannot select that. They are all grayed out. Okay, so that's how you can do minimum date. Now let's say if you want to do maximum date, you can create another variable, max date, calendar dot current dot date by adding again day, and we can provide a value, and this time we can provide 20 days. Okay, to date, and here instead of doing this min date, we can actually do max date. So dot 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 max date. All right. So if we do that, we forgot the comma again, and now it's going to be 20 days in advance. So let's see, if we want to do February and want to move future in February, we can only go up to February 5th. Okay, So that's what it's counting. It's not going even to the next year because our max is defined to be 20 days from now. So that's how you can restrict your date picker to have only the maximum amount that's allowed to go. Okay. Now, let's say if you wanted to have both minimum and maximum. Okay. It's simple. You can just see, so just say min date dot dot dot, and dot 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 is a range. You can have like less than, and all the range related things that you can actually think of, you can apply those here. Okay, so min and max. Now this actually sets the minimum date to be -1. That means you cannot go beyond today. Yeah, and you cannot go beyond February 5th. Yeah. So that's how you can set your date pickers minimum and maximum dates. Okay. Now, what can you do? Like what can you show when a user selects stuff? Okay. So let's take a look at that one. So if I want to display what user has selected, I'm going to say date selected. Okay. And I'm simply going to say date selected right here. And as you can see, it's actually, it's printing good, like, it's putting all the information in there. But what if you wanted to have a certain format to display that? Well, that is another thing that we need to handle, and we need to handle it outside our views. The way you're going to handle it is basically by creating a date formatter for formatting dates. So we're simply going to say date formatter, and it's going to be of type date formatter. And we're going to basically create this this property getter and setter. So because we are doing just a getter, we don't have to have it defined. So let df is equal to date formatter, and df dot date style is, we can actually select which style we want. So I actually like short, so I can just say short and just say return df. So it's going to return the date modifier. Now, with that change, with the date modifier in place, we can simply come here and say formatter date formatter. Okay, and as soon as we define that date formatter and click resume, you're going to notice our date is going to basically shrink to have 1/16/20. Okay, so that is how it actually is going to look like. So when you change your selection, so let me see. All right. Come on, Xcode. There you go. It changes as you actually change the value. So that's the property observers that I'm talking about, the bindable properties. So these properties, the date selected is actually observing the changes because it's binded. But it's a bindable object, and it's defined using state. So it's actually observing the changes that are happening in that particular variable and changing it as needed. So those are property observation. So this again goes back to a reactive way of programming things. So reactive programming, and now Apple is taking it to native with the help of Combine and SwiftUI. And as you can see, we did not import any Combine here, and even then these things work. So that means there are part of these observable properties and wrappers that are there that exist in SwiftUI as well, and that actually leverages the power of reactive programming to produce this declarative UI and declarative experience in SwiftUI. So that's what this automatic observation and update works. That's how it works. So with that, let's go ahead and see if we can do something with time. So let's say if you wanted to show time instead of showing date. Okay. So let me create another section here. So I'm gonna format this. Okay. And we can put another section here. And now in this section, we're going to create another date picker. And this date picker is going to have basically selection. So we need to create a state variable where we can track our changes. So time, like so. And we're gonna have have it created, initialize it via date as well, and we're just gonna use it to display only time. Okay, so let's go ahead and have the display component, and display component is going to be hour and minute, and we're gonna make sure the labels are hidden in this case. Okay, so try again. And we should be able to print or get our selector or date picker back here. While it's working, actually, I'm gonna put a spacer to move things up. Okay, there we go. All right, so there we have it. We have our time displayed here. Now, what else can we do with this? So we can actually format the time as we needed or as we desire. So we can create a time formatter. This is once again is going to be a date formatter again. So date formatter, and let's create df. Date formatter. All right, going to return df, and we're going to say df dot date style as none. We don't want any date style, and as time style we want medium. Okay. Let's make date medium as well. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and use a text to display how these selected dates are going to look like. So time selected, or display how time selected is going to look like. Time, and going to use a formatter. Time formatter. Okay, and let's go ahead and resume our update, and or resume preview. It's going to show us. There we go. So if you select, we can see it's changing as we move it. Okay, now all the things that we talk about, min max and having min max together and all those things, same thing applies here. Okay, so you can actually be creative with that and create basically the create an experience where you can actually let users select only limited set, so you can provide that restricted bound depending upon your business need. Okay, there's one more thing I want to show you really quickly, and that is a form, because reason I want to cover. We haven't covered form. We're going to cover forms in a little bit more detail, but I want to show you how form actually displays date, because it has a unique way of displaying it. So we're going to create a section. Don't worry about all these things. We're going to cover these in future videos, but form can have a header, and date picker is the header name for the section, and we're going to have a text, date picker in form. Okay, and we're going to have a date picker here, and you're simply going to say pick a date. Selection is going to be date selected, and display component is going to be date. All right. With that, we are going to try to see, what did I make? Oh, okay. All right. So as you can see, form looks very different, right? So the way form looks is basically it has this section where you can actually select stuff and you can collapse it. Okay, so let me remove one of the or move one of the sections here. So let me move this one down here. Oh, actually, let's leave it like that. Okay, so there we go. I'm gonna paste it here and comment it out. All right. So as you can see, this is our form. This is the header, and we say like date picker in form. This is just a text, and then you have pick a date. Now there is a date. When you select on it, there is a date picker that's displayed. Now you can choose your date, and then you can collapse, and that date is gonna stay selected. Now this date is changing, and these dates are changing because you're using the same bind-in object, and that's actually one of the effect. You can say side effect of using shared variable in the observable situation where we are observing changes and it's being basically updated everywhere else. So you can see the power of observables as well. But yeah, this is how the behavior of date picker changes in forms. Okay, so I just wanted to show you it looks a bit different. I'm glad actually we discussed that. So when we go in the forms, we don't have to go over in too much detail about date picker because we've already covered it. Okay, so this is it for this video, and thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys in next video. Thank you.